Hello and welcome back to the British and Irish Eagles podcast. I am Liam O'Neill, your host, and it is season 7, episode 2 of our podcast after Colleen Wolfe joined us last week. Just as good looking, we have a guest this week from PHLY. Someone who lives and breathes Eagles football and somehow still finds the emotional bandwidth to support Aston Villa. Yes, folks, that level of resilience can only be one man, and that is EJ Smith. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Man, that is quite an introduction. But yes, I definitely live and breathe Aston Villa Football Club. If you check my text history with my wife, there will definitely be a few times where I've said Aston Villa Football Club are ruining my life.
Yep.
So, I'm excited to talk to you guys about the Eagles, about the Premier League, about honestly, we could talk about the Champions League. Phil might have to sit that one out, but about some European football here as well.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'll just take a break.
Right, just by way of an extended intro for anyone, if you've been living under a rock and you don't know much about EJ, one of the most respected and well-read Eagles beat writers out there. You've worked PHLY Sports Now. You've also had some time at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and you're a Temple alumni as well.
I'm a
Putting
professor
guitar
now too.
Professor,
So,
I know. I've been
I
listening
got
to
a
the
lot
last.
going on. Yeah, I told my nephew, I was like, I got 2 jobs, man.
You're gonna get Dr. EJ Smith before your podcast title.
Never.
Is that in the
never.
future?
Yeah,
No, you
I
don't
wasn't a
study
good
anymore.
student, man. I don't think I could go back to school for that. I'll just teach my little class and be happy with that.
So before we go any further, I do want to just jump on that. Who are you teaching right now? I'm assuming it's journalism students. I did journalism at university, went into the corporate world instead of journalism in the end. But my love for journalism still burns strong. Who are you teaching right now in terms of students?
Yeah, so I teach a sports writing class for Temple. So it's really, it's a subject I know quite well. I don't think I'd be qualified to teach anything else really, but we go over the fundamentals of writing, and some of really just as an opportunity for me to show off some of my my colleagues their work and talk about how great I think everyone that I've had the pleasure to work with, how great they are. So it's been fun. It's been really fun.
You're a humble man. That's awesome, EJ. Really, really awesome. All right, so listening to the podcast, those of you who listen regularly during the season, we go through the good, the bad, and the damn right sexy of the week. But we're into the off season now. We're not looking back at the season-ending game. We're looking ahead. There's there's always a lot of talk going on in the Eagles media. It's like Game of Thrones, like being played out on the internet, like on Twitter, and there's talk about Sirianni, whether he's good or not, whether Hurts can do a complex offense, who was at fault for last year. There's the big news that's apparently dropping next week that Schefter won't tell us. That's even bigger than the OC move. There's the AJ Brown. Is he going to be here next year or not? There's a plethora of things to discuss, EJ, and we'll try and get through as much as we can, as well as some fun questions along the way. Phil will bring you in to ask some of these questions, and specifically on the Man United elements, which will be very enjoyable. But I think the first question that we kind of have to go to, which actually isn't on my pod notes, Phil, is this Scheffler news bomb that's dropped and everyone is talking about. There's again, I'll use the word plethora again of things it could be. EJ, I listened to your podcast with Bo yesterday where you were talking about the things it could be. Talk to us, tell us where your thoughts are now, 24 hours later. Have you had any insights? You mentioned a free hit by texting everyone the other day to see what you could get back. What's going on?
Yeah, no, it is. I do like to characterize it as a free hit. You get to text everyone in your phone and go, what could this be? The most outlandish things that you can think of. You usually wouldn't ask those types of questions. So, I can't speak for certain on what Adam Schefter was referring to, but I do think it's shed light on a couple of things that are maybe up in the air more than we expected them to be.
Mhm.
Obviously, I can tell you guys, like I said on the show, I don't think it's a Lane Johnson retirement announcement. I don't think that
Mhm.
he is quite ready to make a decision on that, but I don't think that
Thank God.
anything is imminent there. I think, again, I'm not saying it's not going to happen at some point this offseason, but I don't think that
Sure.
that's going to be in the next week or so. I don't think it's anything too crazy with Jalen or Nick. I think that those guys, you could probably rule them out safely. But again, I do think that this has shed light on the fact that there is some uncertainty about Vic Fangio's, intentions on if he wants to come back for another season. This is a guy, 67 years old. When he joined the Eagles staff, he said that he was, expecting it to be his last stop in coaching. And I saw Mike Garafolo say earlier today that, Vic Fangio considered retirement after they won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So, a year ago, excuse me. So
Yeah.
there is a precedent for Vic Vic considers these things each offseason. I would say that it's not a definitive thing, right now if he'll return. So I think that could have been what he was alluding to. Again, I don't know for certain. Obviously, AJ Brown is also an unpredictable storyline right now. But yeah, no, my eyes would be on Vic Fangio for the next couple of days and next few weeks to see if he wants to come back for another season.
It would be crazy if the Eagles lost another OC and DC in the same,
Yeah.
round. Everything
It's-
that goes with it. Phil, you could say something?
I was going to say, it feels very much like a boxing match where you're focused on his strong hand, and then suddenly out of the
all of a sudden the
peripheral
haymaker
vision comes the haymaker comes in, and you're like, oh, how about we rip out your defensive coordinator and throw that in the mix as well?
Sounds good.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't think we can handle it.
No,
I don't
Vic
think the
is-
fan base can handle
yeah.
it.
Vic is one of the best play callers, not only in the league right now, but of his generation. You've seen how much he's transformed the Eagles, not just, where they were when he got here in terms of where they ranked in a lot of key categories and how much that defense was struggling, with Sean Desai. And then when Vic Fangio gets there, it's Zach Bond and it's, Jalen Carter getting the most out of him, Jordan Davis, obviously Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, both drafted with Vic Fangio's guidance as part of that. He had a real influence on the draft strategy
Williams,
the last
Josh
few years.
Sweat,
Everyone.
Yeah.
It felt like Reed Blankenship took a step too. He is he would be a significant loss for them. It's not as simple as saying, oh, just go get another, proven defensive play caller. There really isn't someone with the track record of developing players, the feel for the game that Vic has, in-game adjustments. Just how dominant that Eagles defense has been. We talked about it all season, right? Like Vic Fangio is the one who was holding that season together while the offense was struggling. So no, obviously the Eagles are going to do everything in their power to convince Vic to come back for another season. But yeah, again, I think that he is getting to the end of his career here and is taking real stock every offseason.
A great answer. And one of the biggest things I take away from your answer there is the shedding of light on things that maybe the fan base weren't expecting was going to happen or how up in the air they were. Like another rumor out there is Stoutland. Could Stoutland be retiring? Don't know how much credence there is to that, but there's another rumor. I'm not sure if it's been verified that he was the run coordination responsibilities may have been taken away from him last year as well. Obviously, we know that some offensive coordinators want to run the entire offense, so that's an interesting angle, I suppose. Perhaps you mentioned this, maybe a new stadium, or I saw a stadium announcement could be something that could be there. I think the most catastrophic thing for me would be it was something to do with Sirianni or Jalen, because I'm very much in both of their camps and have been and continue to fight the good fight for them in the British and Irish Eagles WhatsApp chat. Only today I put a poll up. Is Sirianni a good head coach or not? Which I think is the most ridiculous question personally in the world, given his record. Like you don't luck or fluke your way into that. You don't do that much in spite of your own abilities. I believe in leadership, setting cultures, and how important that is for organizations, whether it's a sports organization or a corporate organization. But right now it's 60-40. No, he's not a good coach in the British and Irish Eagles chat. So
that surprises me. Yeah,
it's a little more nuanced than that. Like, you can't just ask a question like that and
Oh, I
expect
can.
it to. No, but you can, but you're not going to get the results that you want. And it's not just a question of whether he's a good head coach. It's a question of his impact, bad and good, his influence, bad and good. There's no denying his results and what he's achieved, but I think we have to be careful about how we phrase the question, because it's not just about
I know.
good or
I'm
bad.
just having fun. Don't stop me.
Yeah,
But I am interested to
understand.
get your thoughts, EJ. Sorry about the Stout
yeah.
situation.
Yeah, on Stoutland, it was Jeff McClain, my former colleague at the Philadelphia Inquirer, who reported that he had lost his some of his responsibilities as the run game coordinator. And I mean, Jeff is an excellent reporter, so I take his reporting for what it is there. And I think, I see you got justice for Stout there, Phil, and I understand. Like, he is one of, if not the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. He's certainly right at the top. I think the thing with Stoutland is, and this is not a criticism. It's just an observation. It's a fact from, the conversations that I've had is that some of the mechanisms of a Jeff Stoutland run game don't always marry up perfectly with, the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan tree, how much they use motion, how they try to make the run and the pass game look exactly the same. Now, I think it's a very fair, and honestly, it probably would be my rebuttal. The Eagles had a historic run game with Jeff Stoutland as their run game coordinator. So, there's different ways that you can succeed in the NFL and different ways you can build a successful offense. So, obviously the results, if Jeff Stoutland did lose his title as run game coordinator midway through the year, the results were not encouraging for what it looks like without Jeff Stoutland having a heavy hand in it. So I think that is something that they're going to have to figure out with this offensive coordinator search. To me, if you're bringing in an offensive coordinator that doesn't see the value in Jeff Stoutland, then that should be, honestly, maybe not a disqualifying factor, but a factor that you have to take with, significant weight. I mean, because, we just mentioned with Vic Fangio, the development aspect of with, a coach that can really bring players along. Jeff Stoutland's resume in that regard is, unquestioned. It is as good as it can get. So to me, I think that, you'll have to figure out what the offense looks like. And I honestly think that it's a problem that is worth solving there. If it is a matter of, maybe the motion side of things, maybe some of the play action game, maybe you don't have access to some of the things that Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay do. But again, there's different ways that you can build out, a highly productive offense. We've seen it with the Eagles as an example.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I'm just thinking as you were talking there, I can't wait to get Jamal Singleton back on the podcast.
Yeah, he's great. Nottingham Forest fan. Yeah.
Oh, huge. Wait, he's a Forest fan because of our podcast.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah, well, him and I have talked about the Premier League a couple of times too.
Oh, yeah? Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. He's a good guy.
He's a great guy, really good friend of ours. And we're going to have loads of questions for him about this next year. Like, why was it taken away from Jeff Stoutland if it was? What changed? Like, were we giving something away in the way we were running plays or the way we were set up that was giving it away to defenses? You can also talk about the offensive line not having their greatest year this year, but then you could counteract by saying they were banged up, and how banged up were they versus what they were telling us. So it's a big, it's like a Rubik's Cube. Like what it is. And I mean, even Sirianni himself said he was asked like what went wrong, and he's like, I kind of don't know yet. Need to
I don't
go
know.
back and analyze. No,
I think that was being in the building all year. Like the sense you got first and foremost, like those O-linemen, they were all banged up. You could tell early in the season. I remember I had a conversation with Jordan Mailata about it, and he just said like, it feels like we never got. It feels like they just finished last season and went straight into next season, and that is the cost of making a Super Bowl run. It's part of the reason it's hard to repeat. So I can tell you for certain that those guys were all dealing with injuries. I don't know, like if that necessarily means that next season they'll feel amazing. I think, especially with Landon Dickerson, he's a guy who's dealt with a ton of injuries, but dating back through his college career. So, that is
3
an unknown.
ACLs or something, wasn't it?
2 ACLs, 2 really bad ankle injuries. He had the meniscus this year. He's had back injuries, calf injuries. He's had a lot of injuries. Now he is, he's one of the more interesting stories on the team because he's got a background in gymnastics. And he has he's got a flexibility and a mentality also that allow him to really come back from injuries typically. So because of that, at the end of the season, when we were asking him, do you think you'll, an off season lead to you feeling 100% coming back and being your former self? And he said, I wish I had the answer to that. I wish, I'd feel a lot better if I knew. That definitely raised my eyebrows. So I think the injuries up front were a big deal for it. But, in general, I think it was like a Rubik's Cube. I think that's a good way of putting it, because to me, it seemed like, if it were one thing, if it were easy, if it were a simple fix, they would have done it. They tried different things. Nick Sirianni got more involved toward the end of the season, but it was definitely a multifaceted thing. And I think that's why, there will be legitimate questions around the Eagles offense, even going into next season, pretty much regardless of who they bring in at offensive coordinator.
Well, great segue. Let's talk about the offensive coordinator position. Phil, I'd be interested to get your takes on who you want who's in the running now. There's a lot off the board. Eagles are obviously doing their due diligence. I listened to your points about it's free consultancy isn't the reason they're elongating it out, right? If they got their guy, they're going to get their guy, and they're going to try and hire him straight away. They obviously wanted Mike McDaniels, they wanted Brian Dable. It's been widely reported that they were high on their list of candidates, and we could talk about the whys and which ways they didn't choose the Eagles. But let's just talk about right now, EJ. The candidates that they have, I think they've interviewed 3 people now for 2 interviews as of yesterday. Take us through those candidates and who you're leaning to right now for the Birds.
Yeah, so right now, to my knowledge, it's Josh Grizzard, who is a Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator, Sean Mannion, who is the Packers quarterbacks coach. He's very inexperienced, but had an extensive playing career for a lot of highly thought of coaches like Sean McVay and Kevin O'Connell. And then Jim Bob Cooter, who is the Indianapolis Colts offensive coordinator currently, but does not have play calling responsibilities in that role. So for him, the Eagles job would represent a step up. So.
Or Nick Sirianni, if you believe Adam Schefter yesterday on national TV saying that Nick Sirianni will call the offense if they can't find someone.
Yeah, that was an interesting note from him. I would say for an Eagles fan, you'd get clarity on Nick and as a play caller, but they're in a Super Bowl window. To me, you don't invite that variance in the Super Bowl window. So for that reason, I would tell you guys, I think Josh Grizzard is interesting. I know that the Tampa Bay Bucs offense isn't necessarily considered one of the more forward-thinking or innovative ones, but I think that they've done some nice things schematically. And if you look at the talent that they have across the board, they've generally put out, a good offense with some good that kind of I would say got the most out of the talent that they had there. So, Baker Mayfield was playing at a really high level at the start of the season, and then injuries really started to catch up to that group. Obviously Josh Grizzard has play calling experience as well, which is something I think the Eagles should really prioritize. We've seen what it looks like when they have a first-time play caller in that job. I think that, they should not be inviting the risk of, a high risk, high reward candidate. So, for that reason, I think Josh Grizzard makes a lot of sense. Jim Bob Cooter is somebody who's obviously very familiar with Nick Sirianni. He's on the Eagles staff. I know the name is really
everyone in the British and Irish Eagles crowd chat wanted just to be able to cheer for Jim Bob Cooter. I'm new to America in terms of living here. I've visited loads. It is the most southern hillbilly
that doesn't get much more southern
name
than that
ever.
For those who listen to our show, the PHLY Eagles show, that it would be pretty much my worst nightmare for the offensive coordinator to have that last name because of my co-host and the fun he will have with that name. I think he's someone who is obviously got connections with Nick Sirianni. He was on the Eagles staff in 2021 as I think it was a senior offensive consultant or assistant. He's got a firm understanding of the offense that Nick comes from, that Indianapolis Colts, that Phillip Rivers influenced system. Now, that is not necessarily viewed as a good thing by all people. I understand why, because, I think, if you're looking at this Eagles offense and the way that they operated last year, I think it's fair to say they needed an overhaul. And I'm not entirely sure that Jim Bob Cooter will be able to introduce that. I do think there'd be changes. He has a reputation for a vertical passing game, more intricate concepts. And I think, if you're hiring Jim Bob Cooter, you're probably arguing that this offense didn't need to make a complete 180. You feel good about Jeff Stoutland being in charge of the run game and Jim Bob Cooter bringing some passing concepts and trying to marry those things together. So
I like who you think that is, EJ. So you've just given Yeah, you've just given two great scenarios there with Gizzard,
Yeah,
who would change it up, call plays before, be able to push back against Sirianni,
sure.
more
Yeah.
so, or a Sirianni higher ish, which is kind of what Jim Bob Cooter would
Yeah,
be, and
that's what
the
gives me
belief.
pause with Jim Bob Cooter is that I'm
Yeah,
not sure that the organization is going to be eager to let Nick hire another one of his friends. And I know that that's a little reductive. I understand that Jim Bob Cooter is, a well-respected coach, but I also do think that the way that things went with Kevin Patullo, the way that things went a few years ago with Brian Johnson, although that Brian Johnson year is viewed a little differently in hindsight now. It's honestly the last time that they had a semi-functional pass game outside of obviously some issues with the blitz and turnovers that year. But I digress. I do think that, for that reason, I would
bring
probably
Brian
lean
back.
a little bit. Yeah, it would be funny. I for that reason, I do think that Josh Grizzard would make more sense. I probably would say, just based off my own logic, I would probably say that he's more likely. And then Sean Mannion, I mean, that's a tough one to place from an outsider's perspective. Even someone who talks to people in the building, it's hard because only they have the answers on whether or not they feel good about someone as young as him, someone as inexperienced. He's got 1 year as a quarterback's coach under his belt. He really is. You think about how Josh McCown was when he got hired by the Vikings. He really is kind of that similar mold where it's like he's been a lot of places, worked with some good offensive minds. The Eagles have the answers on how he would be in the meeting room, how he'd be installing an offense, and most importantly, how he would be sequencing plays in game. Those are big questions that we don't have the answer to. So it's hard from my perspective to know what they're getting there.
Yeah, and Phil, I want to bring you in on a few questions here around Sirianni and Hertz and projections and what next year looks like. But just a couple of things for me. One, I can't get away from Mannion sounding like a bunion. Like as
Yeah.
so every time I think of it, it's all I think about. So I can't.
It's
For
cutting
that
edge
reason,
journalism.
for that reason alone, I'm out on Mannion because I could just think
Okay.
of a
Fair
bunion.
enough. Yeah.
But I can see that the pros for both of our options. Um, I am of the opinion that the Eagles definitely need to change some things on the offense. Clearly, they need to do that. What we saw last year was not working. It was too risk averse. It was too obvious. It was too simple. But the year before, like, it wasn't too dissimilar, but there were a few other things thrown in, and the run game was better. Like so, and this team has proven they can win in a Nick Sirianni offense. Like with this squad, like that is the ceiling is Super Bowl, and Hertz's ceiling is Super Bowl MVP. So it's possible. And hindsight is a wonderful thing. Say they get rid of Sirianni or the OC this year and Sirianni next year and Hurts the year after, all of which are possible outcomes from where we sit right now. 10 years from now, when we look back at what we had, is is the fan base and the media a little overhyped and over expectant of the performance that we've become used to recently? And is that clouding our judgment of what is really good still versus what is not as bad as some people think? Kind of a bit of a rant
Yeah.
there, but you know where
No,
I'm
but I get
going.
what you're saying. I think that the fan base is intense. I mean, you guys know it just as well as I do that there is an urgency and a heightened scrutiny when things aren't going well in this town. But I like to remind people that like the heightened scrutiny is there's nowhere higher in this city in terms of scrutiny and urgency than the top floor at the NovaCare complex.
Mhm.
Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, honestly, the organization top to bottom, they have an expectation of winning, So I think that it's
Sure.
funny because like there are conversations that fans will have that maybe are hyperbolic, but a lot of those conversations happen inside the building too. And it's a matter of nothing sacred in a sense. Especially we've seen Howie Roseman make really shrewd moves where you didn't expect them. The Carson Wentz trade, obviously, you could have seen it coming to a certain extent, but that is the type of move that a lot of organizations don't make just because it feels so crazy to move on from somebody that quickly. So, things move fast in the NFL, and really they don't move much faster anywhere other than the NovaCare complex. So I get that from that perspective, but yeah, I always push back on it being the fans. I think that it's reflective of the way the organization is run. Think about Doug Peterson getting fired. Like I think that they do a good job, and I think it's honestly a good thing about the organization that they don't really they don't let people nobody's on scholarship. I've heard Howie Roseman say that before. There's not really a past achievement credit that you get necessarily. I think they ask themselves, with these decisions. Is this what's best for the team
Every
moving
year.
forward? Yeah,
At the
every
end of
single
the year.
season. And
Yeah.
if the answer is not, a resounding yes, then they evaluate it. So things move fast for that reason. But I do think, especially as eventually we'll transition into Premier League talk here, where it's like you want your team to be asking that question every year. You don't want them resting on their laurels or anything like that.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe the exception to the rule there in terms of scholarship is Jeffrey Leary's son himself. But
Yeah.
apart from that,
I don't think he's going to get fired. You're right.
Phil, I've got more questions, but I'm conscious I'm taking over. So over to you, buddy.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a two-part. It's Nick Sirianni orientated. First part is your personal current confidence levels in Nick Sirianni as it stands at the moment, and how much pressure do you think he is under coming into this very important season?
Yeah, no, I think to answer the second part first, there is a lot of pressure going into this season. I think, it will be, I don't know if it's the experience covering Doug Peterson post Super Bowl that is kind of clouding my judgment here, but we've seen it play out where a coach that wins a Super Bowl maybe doesn't have as long a runway as you think when things don't go well. And if you look at it's the Super Bowl should be weighted heavily when you look at Nick Sirianni's track record. But two of the seasons, the season before and after, the team really underperformed and struggled and couldn't get out of a rut from an offensive perspective this season. And I would argue from a defensive perspective in 2023, but obviously the offense had some culpability in that as well. So, next season I think is going to be really important for Nick. And, my confidence level, I would still say I have a good deal of confidence for Nick. I've always said that I think that he is really at his best and really one of the best coaches I've been around when the team is doing well. He is really good at keeping a team on the track. And I think, that might seem like something that should be easy, but I'm not sure that every coach has mastered that. He is a very consistent messenger. He handles locker room dynamics well. You'll hear players and organizational figures talk about him as a connector, somebody who keeps teams tightly knit. So I think that in those areas, he does a really, really nice job. And I think if the team is doing well next season, those characteristics will really come out and shine. But I do think that there are legitimate questions about how he handles a team that's going like this, right? A team that is struggling and hitting adversity. We've seen him, overcome that adversity at times, but we've also seen him really struggle to get teams out of that rut. So, and again, there's an urgency with this roster, which is why I do think that there will be pressure next season, and especially if the offensive coordinator search is reflective of, how Nick is thought of from, different corners of the league.
Just to follow on from that quickly, because of what we've spoken about already, being that there's a potential that defensive coordinator situation is going to be a factor as well. The Jeff Stoutland situation, a new OC, the history of the years that he hasn't hired his own guy, they've done well. The years that he's hired his own guy from within, they haven't done so well. Do you think this season is going to be the hardest season for Sirianni, because this is not just an offensive coordinator? There feels like there's a lot more factors going in this season, and it might just be a little bit too much for the guy. He's able to manage everybody in the locker room, everybody in the organization, and keep them functioning. Could this be maybe one step too far?
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult season, and if Vic Fangio does retire, then I think you could make a real argument this is going to be the hardest season, because I think an underrated thing when we evaluate head coaches is their ability to fill out a staff and identify coaching talent. It's a big reason why Doug Peterson, why his tenure with the Eagles came to an end, is because he really struggled with that aspect of replacing good coordinators with good coordinators. And I think when you look at Sean McVay's and the Kyle Shanahans of the world, they've really mastered that. They found ways to keep promoting and elevating coaches without having that drop off. So, no, I think there will be a lot of challenges, and, we'll see how this offseason plays out. But I think it's fair to expect that the Eagles offense could take a step back in terms of personnel. They might be, I think they're going to need to rebuild it offensively. I think the draft is going to be really big for that. So, no, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. There's going to be a need for the coaching to elevate certain areas that we didn't see last season. And, a lot of that will fall at the feet of Nick Sirianni if it doesn't go well.
got a follow-up question, Phil, because this is awesome. Great insights, EJ. Um, the big, trying to get the big takeaways I'm getting out of this. My big takeaway there is Nick Sirianni, his ceiling when he has a good team is to take them to the Super Bowl and to win the Super Bowl and to maintain that performance. But
Yeah.
his lows are where he can't solve the problem in season when it's not going so well. So you got to ask yourself as a fan base, and I'm talking to everyone listening in to this podcast, whenever that is, like, do you want a head coach who coaches the Lions and the Bills and the Bengals and the 49ers who have great teams and they perform well and it looks sexy, but they fall short when it matters, but they're consistently always there and thereabouts? Or do you want a head coach who, when given a right team, can go and take you to the promised land? I
Yeah.
know which one I would prefer.
Yeah, I always say to people when in Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni discussions, because I think I feel like I'm balanced when I talk about these two guys. I can be critical of them, but I always kind of default back to you can win a Super Bowl with them, and there are a lot of coaches and a lot of quarterbacks that you can't answer that question with. That is not to say that they are. I mean, I would say that they are both imperfect as the main characters and drivers of these teams, but there's a lot of teams in the NFL that have quarterbacks and coaches you are not confident can get to the levels that they've gotten to. So, but again, for that reason, there's urgency now because the Super Bowl windows don't stay open for too long.
And I think people listening will say I'm probably not as balanced in my defense of Hurts and Sirianni, but I'm growth mindset. I'm going to be better this year. I'm going to look at this and learn from this and be a better podcaster. Couple of scenarios for you. One, my favorite outside the box, and you talked about in your podcast, is Nate Shieldhouse to get the OC role from the Rams. Probably butchered a second name there.
I think you got it. I think you nailed it.
Okay, all right. I really, just because of what everyone says about him, like all these like incredibly intelligent minded coaches, what they say about him now, that may not suit the way Stoutland and his offense runs, etc., like you were saying earlier. But what about this as a scenario, right? DC Fangio goes, obviously we're replacing our OC. Waltzing back into the building on the defensive side is Jim Schwartz, and on the offensive side is Doug Peterson as OC. What about Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz coming back, running it back?
Funny. Yeah, I could see Schwartz coming back. I don't think I could see Doug coming back quite as much. I think Schwartz is a real possibility if Vic retires. I think he'd make a lot of sense. The only thing with Schwartz is it would be a huge departure from what they do schematically. Vic is odd fronts, two high safeties, make everything look the same pre-snap. I mean, Schwartz is even front, one high safety, really dictate terms to the offense. So very different. Some of the players would have interesting roles. Cooper DeJean, I'd wonder if he moves to safety in a Jim Schwartz system, plays more like Malcolm Jenkins did. But I mean, at the same time, Jim Schwartz is a proven defensive coordinator. I mean, he's had some great defenses and obviously has good relationships in the building as well. So be interesting. I don't think that Eagles fans want to hear this right now because I think they wish they want Vic Fangio to stay. And I agree with them. I think, replacing Vic Fangio is you're not going to find another Vic Fangio. But for Doug, I don't know. I'm not convinced about Doug as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. But I mean, where they're at in the search right now. Yeah, where they're at in the search, maybe it's not the worst idea to give him a call.
Phil, as a fan of Manchester United for years, I feel like I'm going to give you the floor to speak to EJ about his fandom for Aston Villa and all that entails.
Where did it start, EJ? Like, how did you become a Villa fan, and what's your best and worst moments as a fan since you became a fan?
Okay, I've got answers for all of this. So I started rooting for Villa before the 2023 season. I had gone to a West Ham versus Leeds match at London Stadium. My wife and I were in London. We wanted to go to a Premier League match. And
not you and Elliot? You didn't fly over Elliot to see that one?
No, Elliot and I do. We've talked about doing like a Premier League boys trip. I think it could happen.
I'll join you.
You have to give us a shout if you do, man.
Absolutely. So we went to the match, and at that point I was like, well, maybe I'll root for West Ham. I'm here, I'm experiencing, because like when I was there, it like blew me away, the experience, the atmosphere and the experience. And I know what you guys will say, like London Stadium is probably one of the worst Premier League stadiums that you can go to, but
One
for
of the
me
worst
it
I've
was
ever
like,
been to.
man, like everyone is so engaged and they're singing, and it's just this amazing atmosphere. So I was like, I'm in. I want to.
Blowing Bubbles, I believe that's one of their songs.
Yeah,
West
right.
Ham.
Yeah. So I was like, I want to root for a Premier League team, and West Ham had just won the Europa League or the Europa Conference League,
okay.
And I was like, I can't root for them. Like, I can't be a bandwagoner.
I
Jump
appreciate
on the bandwagon. Yeah, like they just won a trophy. I'm not gonna front run. So I was like, on the market. I'm like, who am I going to root for? And Villa came to Philadelphia that summer. They played at the Link, and I was at the game. They played Newcastle, actually, in a preseason game. Emi Buendia tore you guys up that day, too. And I was like, all right. Like, I did my research. I'm like, Unai Emery's a good manager. They got some exciting young players. Like, I'm in. I'm going to root for Villa. And, I mean, ever since I started
club
rooting
as
for
well,
Villa,
EJ. Like, their history is
like
Forest.
Europe in 1982. Yep.
There you go. We got to go all the way back to the 50s to give our stats for that.
So, and like ever since I started rooting for them, they've just been doing this. Like they qualify for the Champions League. They beat Bayern Munich in the group stage. My wife and I. So you asked me my favorite Villa memory. It's actually a loss. We went to see them play PSG at the Parc des Princes, and that was just an unbelievable experience. Like, just like living and dying by every insane outside the box goal that PSG scored that night.
Yeah.
Villa were up 1-0 or sorry 1-0 in that game. Morgan Rogers slides one across the box. Yuri Tielemans slides one across the box. Morgan Rogers scores it, and I'm just like, oh my goodness! I was screaming at the top of my lungs. And then PSG did what PSG did.
Before? Was that your first time?
I haven't been to Paris before, and it's funny because I wouldn't have wanted to go if it weren't for a soccer match. And my wife was like, oh, because when they qualified for the quarterfinals, right? I told my wife, I said, well, listen, like, I think we should go see Villa play PSG. Like, that's like a historical thing. And I'm saying, let's go to Villa Park, baby. Like, let's go to Birmingham. And she's like, we will be going to Paris if you want to do this. So
I mean, the only downside, or one of the main downsides of being a Villa fan is you have to go to Birmingham to watch them.
Yeah.
Like that is one of the biggest downsides.
Man. Don't come after the good people of Birmingham. I'm a big fan of all things Villa, so I won't. As you guys would say, I won't slag off Birmingham. I appreciate them. But yeah, no, it's a little tough being a fan of a London club. But I'm not a front runner. Like I said, I feel like I got on Villa with the ground floor. I'm hoping they win the Europa League. They're not doing so well today. They're currently down 2-0 to RB Salzburg.
Again. Well, of course, Newcastle played it. Oh, there you go. Newcastle played PSG yesterday and drew 1-1. I was watching.
I had my eye on that game. Newcastle are such a bad matchup for Villa. You guys are like one of the most physical teams in the Premier League. It feels like every time they go to St. James's Park, they just because under Unai, I would categorize Villa as like kind of like the Premier League's best impersonation of a La Liga team. Did
he turned us down before we got Eddie?
I did. Yeah. Yep. And I love that for Villa. But like they are like a La Liga team almost. They're smaller. They're technical. They like to play out from the back. They overload the midfield. And you guys, man, are just pace and power. You guys are dominant in the air. And it feels like every time that Villa plays Newcastle, I'm just bracing for the worst. So when we beat you guys last week, oh my God, I was over the moon.
I was so pissed off because I knew you were coming on the podcast, and I was like, "Oh God, man, really?" Phil, we got loads of fun questions here. Pick a few.
Oh wait, no, I got to say this for Phil.
Oh,
Phil,
yeah.
You'll like this. My worst Villa memory is I was in San Francisco on a trip with my wife's family. And
flex with all these trips, EJ.
I know. Well, listen,
like
I only have
Paris.
I only got like 4 months to travel, so it's honestly it's like 2 months to travel. So we squeeze them in. So it's the final day, and my wife and her family have gone out to breakfast, and I have stayed in the hotel because Villa are playing Man United and all they need is a draw to qualify for the Champions League a second straight year. And
Oh.
one of the worst officiating decisions I've ever seen in my life disallows a goal that Morgan Rogers scores, and they lose that game to United. United had nothing to play for. Villa cannot win at Old Trafford, and for that reason, Villa are playing in the Europa League right now instead of the Champions League. So you're welcome, Leah, because otherwise you guys would have been in the Europa League.
I know. I mean, I'm aware of that. In fact, I think, Phil, I said, I definitely have not lived up to this promise. But I'm pretty sure when that happened, I said that I would not say a bad word about Man United for another 12 months. And I definitely have not managed
you
to.
did.
I definitely have not kept that promise.
But to be honest, for the last year or so, I've been burying my head when it comes to UK football chat. So I've been,
it's tough.
I probably wouldn't have missed it if you had. But you'd probably find, EJ, that would have been one of my worst moments, because to be a team that takes delight in ruining another team's season as their trophy for that season is such an epic fall from grace for being a United fan. That's probably one of my lowest moments. So if that makes you feel any better,
it does make me feel a little better. You guys will be fine though. You guys, you'll figure it out.
They're in the cycle, EJ. They're in the cycle. It's like we're shit. Sack the manager. Oh, we've won a couple of games. We're good again. We're going to be fine. Oh, no way. We're actually shit. We better go and sack him again. And the cycle continues.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's a good couple of games. If you're going to beat any two teams on a freak purple patch,
you look good.
Could do worse than Man City and Arsenal. But
it's crazy how much better your players look just by playing in their natural positions.
It's unbelievable.
It's like, oh, wow. Like maybe just play a 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1 and everything.
Amazing. A departure from being stubborn. As a coach,
so
Eagles could probably learn a thing or two in that regard. But just to bring it back a little bit in the NFL side of things, would you rather watch Villa defending a set piece or watch the Eagles run it up the middle on 3rd and 14?
Ooh. I'll go Villa defending a set piece on that one. It's been slightly better. Amadou Onana is good in the air, so he's helped us out a little bit. So yeah, I'll go Villa defending a set piece on that one. Those 3rd and long cowards draws, man, they are tough.
Scarring.
I was there for all the games this year in the Eagle. I managed to get season tickets, EJ.
Now that's a flex right there. There's a flex.
It's a flex. I've probably flexed on every podcast we've done this year about that. And honestly, the groan in the stadium when it was 3rd and 14, like you just knew what was coming. Yep. All right, a few more here. So we'll split these up, Phil. If there were an NFL combine for beat writers, what event would Bo beat you in, and what would you dominate Bo in?
This is a good one. I would definitely dominate Bo in like any strength category. The bench press for sure. I think Bo would probably beat me in. He's good at like stuff that's weird. He's like randomly good at things, so he'd be good at like probably something silly like the catching drill. He'd probably be pretty good at
like a 3-cone drill or something.
Yeah, 3-cone he'd be okay. If there was like a kicking circuit that we had to go through, I'm sure he'd be good at that. Yeah, he's good at ping pong. He's good at shooting. Like,
is he good at like pool? Is he like good at pool and darts and stuff like that?
Yes, he's got those like random sports skills that I don't have. So he'd be good at that type of stuff.
Snapper, maybe.
Yeah, Bo could have definitely been a long snapper. Yeah, it's very on brand for him to just be like weirdly good at something that you wouldn't expect.
I mean, I'm sure you know this is clipped for one of the short videos for YouTube. All right, define a chocolate cake.
Oh man, I think there are multiple definitions for chocolate cake. I will say that. I think the one that most people would agree is that. An actual chocolate cake, but I'm standing on this, man. If you put chocolate icing on a yellow cake, I'm not saying it's chocolate cake. I'm saying it is a chocolate cake. It's a chocolate flavored cake.
I just want to say I'm with you. I am on your side.
I appreciate that. There aren't many of us out there. Yeah.
No, but like if there is chocolate in the cake, on the cake, in the middle of the cake, around the cake, supporting the cake, it's chocolate cake.
Yeah,
See,
No,
Nick,
a chocolate
Nick
cake.
Sirianni, this is what you reduced us to. Like, the season was that bad that we've got to debate about
Yeah,
chocolate cakes.
we just had
we
playoff games to discuss. We wouldn't have.
we had a question come in. We told people you were on the podcast today in our WhatsApp chat, and we had some weird fucking questions come in. We obviously knew we were going to ask that one. One was, and I wasn't going to ask you. One was, if you could order a pie tonight, what pie would you order?
I've had weirder questions than that on my show, even
Yeah,
before.
from your co-host.
Yeah. If I could order a pie, what would I order? There's this
Have you had
thing.
a
I don't know
pie?
if you guys. If
Have you
you
had a
guys,
pie in a football stadium before?
oh,
Have
like
you
a
ever had?
meat pie is what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
We're talking meat pie.
I have. I had one when we saw West Ham and Leeds.
There you go.
I didn't have one at PSG because, as you guys know, like the away sections at these stadiums, it's basically like a prison. It's like,
Yeah.
you can have like pretzels or popcorn and you must stay in this cage and not, mix it up with PSG fans. So I have had a meat pie. I can't say it's like the most amazing thing I've ever had, especially not the one at London Stadium. I'm not saying I dislike them, for the record, but the one I had was
To be
probably not
clear, the pies at football stadiums are notoriously like
okay.
football grub food. Like it's got its own name, like
Oh, it's
Scran.
called Scran, right? Yeah.
Football Scran. Like
Yeah.
it's
I think I follow an account called Footy Scran. So I'm up
there is
on
one.
that. Yeah, I'm up on the game.
Yeah.
But
The pies are good in Newcastle. I will say that.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm ever getting out there, man. I still got to get to Villa Park.
That's fair.
But no, if I could order an actual pie, I don't know if you guys are familiar with shoe fly pie. It's like a
No.
Pennsylvania thing. It's
Ooh.
just like molasses and powdered sugar on pie. It is impossible to not like it. It is just sugar.
What's the name again? What was the name?
Shoe fly pie, like a shoe fly. You shoot the fly away
Shoe
from it.
fly pie.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't have the most appetizing name, but I will try it.
Yeah, it doesn't look great either, but I promise you will enjoy
It's
it.
good.
Yeah.
All right, couple of quick ones, and then we'll get to some, because I know you're going to go in 10 minutes, and then we'll get to some draft off-season stuff. Who would
Yeah.
win in a fight, Fangio or Stout?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to say Stoutland. I'm amazed by like the physical demands that Stoutland seems fine with. Like, during training camp, like us beat reporters, man, like our backs are tight and, oh my God, like, I feel like, just like so tired from just standing for like 3 hours a day. And
On the little promenade.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not doing. I mean, it's not hard work. I'm not making it sound like we're actually, we're just out of shape. And Stoutland is out there every day, standing around. Like he's in good shape. So I'd say Stoutland.
All right. What's your biggest achievement on Football Manager?
Ooh, I just won 7 trophies in one season with Aston Villa.
That's crazy.
I won the FIFA. I won the Intercontinental Cup. I won the Club
Yeah.
World Cup. I won the
Yeah.
Champions League, the Premier League, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and I also won. Oh man, I missed one. I promise you there was a 7th. I can send you the screenshot after this.
Charity Shield.
Charity Shield. You got it. Yep. So I won
Yeah, I
7
got you, buddy.
season. Scott McTominay may have been the Ballon d'Or winner.
You telling me that on the chat before, I was like, Scott McTominay? What are we doing here? All right, Phil, I'm going to pass it over to you to do the draft and free agency questions. I may need to dive off before we finish up, but I'll leave it in your capable hands to ask the questions, but more than likely I will jump in and interrupt as I usually do anyway.
Sure, no worries. Yeah. So moving on to the draft, EJ, or it's still early. We asked Colleen, and she was like, "I've not even thought about the draft yet. I'm sure you have." But in terms of, we'll keep it simple. Position group. Right now, as it stands, what position group do you think the Eagles will be targeting in the first round, as it stands?
Yeah, I think Howie Roseman, whenever he does his year-end press conferences, he kind of likes to set the expectations for the offseason. And one thing that really stood out to me from hearing from him a couple of weeks ago was him talking about the transition that he expects the team to undergo this offseason. They've really targeted defense heavily in the draft, especially in the early rounds, the last few seasons. They needed to. They needed to rebuild their defense. But now they're going to have to start paying those guys on defense. They're going to get really expensive. Jalen Carter, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. So for that reason, I really expect them to go heavy on offense in the early rounds this year. I think we didn't talk about Lane Johnson. Did we talk about Lane at the top of the show?
Yeah, we said you don't think he's going to go, but he could obviously. But we're going to need his replacement anyway.
Yeah, so I think an heir apparent to Lane Johnson is an important thing for this team. I'm honestly really there, and also at tight end, they're kind of a couple years late on finding the successors for some key players, obviously, in Dallas Goedert and Lane Johnson. I mean, there are a few players more significant in their impact than Lane Johnson. So I could see them going offensive line. I could see them going tight end. I could see them going receiver, depending especially on what happens with A.J. Brown. So, I think that it's going to be an offense-heavy draft. I would, if you asked me to put turkeys on it, as we do on our show, which is basically just to say percentage points on it, I would probably say 55, 60% offensive line. Maybe I'd say 60% offensive line. I'd say like 25% receiver probably, and then 15% tight end. I think tight end's probably a day 2 priority more than a day 1, but I do think offensive line, even you guys got to remember when they drafted Landon Dickerson, they didn't have a clear spot open for him. They weren't sure where he was going to end up playing. He started 14 or 15 games his rookie season because of injuries along the offensive line. So I think they could probably benefit from having someone like that, especially if they view him as a successor for Lane Johnson.
Do you think they could? Go ahead.
I was going to say, is the percentage for receiver taking into account, do you think AJ Brown's going to be here, or you think he's not going to be here?
I think
what are the turkeys? What are the turkeys if he is? So So if AJ Brown is traded, then what are your turkeys between offensive line and wide receiver?
I don't think it's a great wide receiver draft. So I put 25 on wide receiver. I'm so bad at math, guys. I think I probably, if AJ's gone, I probably would only bump it up to 30, 35. Okay. I think that they could target receiver even if AJ's still coming back. I mean, Jahan Dotson really struggled last season in that number 3 role. It's a limited role, but it's still one that you can get real value out of if you have the right player in there.
Well, Darius Cooper as a Hall of Famer, and not next season onward. So
I mean, there are no bigger fans of Darius Cooper than the people that work at PHLY. I mean, we really bought all the stock. So
yeah, me too. But like preseason last season, I was like, he's my dark horse this year. I'm still I feel like he could take over from the big bodied. Anyway, don't send me down a Darius Cooper tree. Phil, back to you.
Yeah. So gonna go down free agency route now. So on both sides, so retention and targeting. Do you think there's any free agents the Eagles are kind of possibly likely to target? And then also, are there any players on the Eagles that you think might actually end up going that could be a bit of a surprise, like a bit like Fangio coming out of left field going, I didn't even think about him not being here?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. In terms of, I think departures are probably the ones that come to mind. I think Nakobe Dean probably signs elsewhere. I think he's going to have a really competitive market.
So sad if that happens.
Yeah, they're well set up. They're well set up to replace him, and it's a position they've already invested so heavily in. I would say Dallas Goedert's another one I would expect to leave. Reed Blankenship to me is an interesting one. I want to see what his market looks like. You hear so often from people in the building about how important he is to what they do in the secondary, especially if Vic Fangio is retiring. His knowledge, getting everybody, where they need to be and really getting those coverage calls to everybody. He's probably more important to the team than like his production alone would suggest. So he's going to be an interesting one to follow. Outside of that, the rest of the guys aren't quite as vital, at least off the top of my head. No, I think it's probably going to be another year where they try to compile some comp picks, let some guys walk. I was going to say Jalen Phillips is probably one that will be an interesting one as well. I could see the Eagles extending him. He's exactly the type of player they like to extend, but he's obviously got the injury history, and I think he's going to have a really competitive market. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Well, one more question, because I want to be respectful of your time, EJ, and then we'll wrap it up. So Aston Villa currently sit 3rd in the Premier League. 46 points, 4 behind Arsenal. Arsenal a bit shaky last couple of games.
Yeah, that's just Arsenal though, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
How many ahead of Man United? Let's Yeah, let's bring us into the
Man United, 4th place, 38 points, 2 ahead of Liverpool, 1 ahead of
Yeah.
Chelsea. You know, they're not. It's not going to last, Phil. Sorry, but 4 points behind the Premier League champions in waiting, and level points with the runners-up last year, Man City. Where are they going to end up at the end of the season? EJ, Emery's come out to say that they're not a contending team with some psychological warfare. Like, what do you reckon is going to happen?
I'm going to go on record here and say that
Okay.
Villa finished 4th this season.
Okay,
I
that'll
think
be a great season.
I hate to say it, but I think that one of United, Liverpool, or Chelsea could overtake them. But I think that they will finish in the Champions League places. I will say 4th. I think injuries have hit them really hard in the midfield. So I think they're going to have some troubles there. They lost Boubacar Kamara for the season. Obviously, John McGinn's going to be out for a while, and Youri Tielemans, one of the most underrated players in the Premier League.
Oh, he's
by the
brilliant.
way.
So is McGinn. They're both great.
Yeah, McGinn's like the heart and soul of the team, and Tielemans is just like he belongs at Real Madrid or Barcelona. Not to say I don't want him at Aston Villa. I want him to retire a Villa legend, but he is just unbelievable. So
Morgan Rogers is one of my favorite players in the Premier League, by the way.
I was just this will be my last big hot take on soccer. So okay. I'm new to soccer. I don't know all of the history around the game, but I will go on record, and this is a hot take people won't agree with. I think Morgan Rogers, like his player comp, is early career, like United Cristiano Ronaldo, like the winger version of Ronaldo. I will go that far. I will say it. If you watch his technical ability, the way he drives with the ball, the way he passes, he can curl passes in, and most importantly, his finishing on the edge of the box. I'm telling you, when you watch I watch the compilations of early career Ronaldo, winger Ronaldo. I see the similarities. I'm
going to leave you there. I think he's great. I think he will play for England in this summer's World Cup. I'm going to stay short of Cristiano Ronaldo. That's a bit of an Elliot Shore-Parks take right there. But sorry, Elliot.
I told you it was a hot take. I knew you guys wouldn't agree, but I watch it every week.
To have passion in your players, though.
I love it. Hey, EJ, we normally get the beat writers on before the season starts to give their year prediction. We'd love to grab you back on. And anytime you want to.
This has been fun, guys. I would love to have back on.
We really appreciate it. And anytime you want to catch a Premier League game on TV in the off season, let me know. Me, you, and Ellie can go and watch Leeds lose to someone, I suppose.
They're doing okay. They're feisty this year. I think they'll stay up. I hope they stay up for Elliot's sake.
Me too. EJ, you're the best. We love listening into your podcast. Please go and follow PHLY podcast. If you don't, there's all Philly sports podcasts on PHLY, but yours is right up there as one of the best, EJ. We've loved having you on. Appreciate your time. I know you already podcasted probably just before this or just after this.
I got one after too. I'm working today. Yeah. I'm just happy to be out of the house with all the snow. So yeah.
You got it. Well, listen, Stay safe, stay warm. Have a great off season. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers, EJ. All right, well, we'll wrap up the British and Irish Eagles podcast, episode 2, season 7. I need to run into the car because I've got a meeting because it is my work day now that I live over in the East Coast. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. We are the British and Irish Eagles. Phil, we never played the advert because we wanted to maximize the time. Are you going to lead us out with the advert, or are we going to tack it on in the editing?
Let's stick it on now. We'll head out with it. Thanks ever so much, EJ. And hopefully speak to you guys soon. And go Birds, everyone.
Go Birds!
Celebrate victories, rally through challenges, and bond with fellow fans as you toast with a dram of Loch Lomond single malt whisky. From tailgating gatherings to watch parties at home, Loch Lomond whisky becomes an essential companion, enhancing the moments that make football so extraordinary. It's the perfect accompaniment, from the joy of victory to the bittersweet moments of defeat. Loch Lomond offer a wide range of malts, with their flagship perfectly balanced, and signature expressions Inchmoan and Inchmuirn to suit any taste palate. Celebrate greatness on and off the field this season with a perfect balance of Loch Lomond whisky and Eagles football. From the first pour to the crowd roar. Fly, Eagles, fly.
ENGLE!